Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. We are here in this second week of the COP20. It's the third day of this second week. And we are going to present the view and the thinking of the Greens in this press conference. To start, I will present myself. My name is Verónica Juzgado. I'm the Executive Secretary of Global Greens, and I'm also from Spain. And in Spain, my partner is EQUO. Global Greens is the partnership of all the Greens around the world. We had 4 federations: the Federation of the Green Parties of America, the European Green Federation, the Asia-Pacific Green Federation, and the African Federation of the Greens. Unfortunately, we have not here with us African people, but they are inside in our organization, and we keep in mind of them. We work with them, and we know how difficult it is to be here for them. For that reason, it's important to also represent them in this negotiation, and Greens also think in the people who are not here, who has no voice. Well, I'm just going to present all our 4 Green speakers. You can see all of us are women. Yesterday was the Gender Day in the COP20, and you can see that for us it's something really important. And it's not just word, it's about action, it's about reality. Then I think this is an example, practical example to demonstrate to the COP how should be sometimes the table. Okay, then on my right, you can see Elizabeth May from Canada. She is the leader of the Green Party of Canada and also member of the Parliament. A little bit more on the right is Christine Mill, the leader of the Australian Greens and also Senator for Tasmania. On my left, we have Eugene Lee from South Korea. She is from Korean Green Party. She is the director of the Policy Committee. And more on my left is Stina Bergström. She's from Sweden, and she's member, Parliament, and representative for Swedish Green Party. Then we are going to start with Elizabeth May from Canada.
Thank you so much, and I'm very, very honored to participate in this press conference on behalf of Global Greens with my colleagues from around the world. And as, of course, we do think of and are grateful for the linkages that we have, including with African Greens who are not able to be with us today, but to have representation from Korea, from Australia, from Europe, and from North America, and from, of course, from Spain, from South America. We're a strong global network. Speaking not just for Canada, but for North America, I've been asked to give some perspective. Obviously, we're a part of the world that has not done our share. The United States, led by Barack Obama, has finally stepped up, and I think the agreement that he announced just before this COP with China is encouraging and has created some more momentum here. Neither of the commitments of China nor the United States are sufficient, but they begin to create the kind of commitment and momentum to carry us forward. Shamefully, my own country of Canada is currently led by a very conservative government led by Stephen Harper, who has done everything possible not only to delay climate action in Canada, but to sabotage climate action in Canada in preference for putting our economic future on a very bad bet indeed, which is on the development of non-conventional oil from the Alberta oil sands, also called tar sands, from a product called bitumen. We don't have a national climate plan in Canada. We have, shamefully, again, there's no word that really matches actions other than shamefully, legally withdrawn from the Kyoto Protocol, canceled all climate plans, We don't even provide rebates for those who want to buy an electric vehicle or move to energy efficiency. Even the basics are no longer being done in Canada as Stephen Harper moves towards a very aggressive pro-fossil fuel economy. Now, the good news is we will be having an election in Canada prior to COP21, and it's extremely likely, I almost want to guarantee it, but I don't want to jinx it. I am very, very positive about the potential for a very different government being in place, a different parliament with many more Greens elected, and a different Prime Minister, so that before COP21, I hope Canada can try to recover our lost reputation and start doing some of the work that needs to be done along with those countries, particularly within the European Union, that have been charting a course to carbon reductions and to a survivable future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Now is Eugene Lee from South Korea.
Yeah. The East Asia has China, the world's biggest greenhouse gas emitter, Japan, the 5th biggest, and Korea, the 7th biggest. The reason shows us one of the most intensive consumption of fossil fuel, and China and Korea continue to construct nuclear power plant. In South Korea, we already have 24 nuclear power plants, and government have a plan to build at least 15 more nuclear power plants by 2035. In China, 27 nuclear power plants is under construction. Fukushima nuclear disaster demonstrates that nuclear power can never be an alternative solution to the climate change. Thus, it is crucial for the 3 countries in East Asia to seek a sustainable energy transition under a new climate regime. Green Party Korea urges the Korean government to stop outdated energy policy that adopt nuclear power as an answer to the climate change. And we have to seek a transition to the sustainable energy policy based on demand control, higher efficiency, and renewable energy. We urge the government to fulfill its responsibility in reducing greenhouse gas emissions as the 7th biggest emitter and the highest growth of greenhouse gas emissions among OECD members. Current Korea's national target is cutting emissions by 30% below BAU level by 2020. Nevertheless, emissions of greenhouse gases increased constantly. Korea government have to submit INDCs as early as possible, at least in the first quarter of 2015. Green Party Korea supports Korean government's contribution of $100 million to the Green Climate Fund. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Now is the turn of Christian Mill from Australia.
Thank you. Well, the Australian government has disgraced Australians in its attitude to action on global warming. We did have in Australia a carbon price, a comprehensive policy framework to address global warming, but our current Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, is a climate denier and has torn down most of the policy framework that was reducing emissions in Australia. In the last day here at the COP, Australia has contributed $200 million to the Green Climate Fund as one of the last countries to do so, and has only done so because of enormous pressure from the rest of the world for Australia to act. The fact is, it's $200 million over 4 years, and that money is coming out of the overseas aid budget. It is not new money, it is not additional money, it is just taking money from overseas aid and transferring it to the Green Climate Fund. Nobody should see this Australian move as a change of heart. We have a government which is spending that money because it wants to play itself back into the climate negotiations, because Australia wants to be able to have the leverage from that $200 million so as to be able to edit the texts that will be coming out of this conference and form the basis of negotiation in Paris. It is critical that the rest of the world keeps up the pressure on Australia. No one can believe that this government in Australia is serious about a good climate agreement outcome in Paris. They've already tried to take out of the text reference to a long-term temperature limit. That is how disgracefully they are behaving. So Australia will try and weaken the rules. Australia will use its position here to try to undermine the goal of a 2050 fossil fuel-free future. They can't believe that is possible. So my request to the other delegates here is to keep the pressure on Australia. Don't see the Green Climate Fund money as anything other than leverage, and accept, hopefully, that in Australia there will be a change of policy after the next election. But in the meantime, Australians do not support the climate denialism of our current government, and it's a tragedy that our government sees the Canadian government under Stephen Harper as Australia's best friend, and I think it gives an indication that they are fossil fuel pariahs on the global scene. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. And now is the star to Stina Bergström from Sweden.
Thank you, and afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, my name is Stina Bergström, and I am a member of the Swedish Greens and a representative for the Swedish Parliament. In Sweden, the Greens is in the government since the last election in September, and we have 6 Greens ministers in the government. One is the Minister for Climate and Environment, Åsa Romson. She is also Deputy Prime Minister. Åsa Romson is here in Lima and leading the Swedish delegation, whom I'm also in participation in. This autumn, EU took a decision of a binding EU target of at least 40% domestic reduction in greenhouse gas emission by 2030 compared to 1990. It is a good thing that EU have taken a target, but it is, although EU pretends so, not enough to reach the goal to keep the average global temperature increase below 2 degrees. The European Greens wanted a higher target. We also criticized that this target is only at a European level and does not tell what every country in EU has to do. Further, we welcome the pledge to the Green Climate Fund. Sweden made a pledge of $580 million to the fund before Lima. Other countries in EU also has made pledges, but quite a few of the EU countries take the money from the developing aid. As in Australia, as we heard before, it's the same problem. That is something that the European Greens is criticizing. Here in Lima and back home in EU, we will also point out the problem that a country here in Lima only make pledge for 4 years. That is not enough. We have to have a safe, upgoing contribution to the climate funds. That is a big issue here in Lima and the clue to successful negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you, Stina. Remember that the Global Greens have members in more than 90 countries. All of us work together and strongly about climate change. We really want to face it in a fair way and to get something good from Lima. Then this is one of the pieces of our information, of our communication with all of us, and we would like to keep working with you and with all the Greens around the world together. I just would like to say thank you to all the speakers here and to say hello to all the Greens that are watching now in this moment from the different places of the world. Thank you.
Excuse me, since we have a little bit of time, I'm wondering if I can presume to ask my colleagues. We're all in touch with the negotiators. We're watching it very closely. I'm wondering if we can take a temperature of how we think COP20 is going and whether at this point on the Wednesday night we're anticipating enough being done to have a robust treaty in time for COP21 in Paris. I wonder if we could start with our colleague from Sweden and work our way down.
I wish I could say that I'm really confirmed that it will be a successful meeting and a successful negotiation, and that we will have a text that is something clear to Paris. But I have my doubts.
Yes, all the scientific result tells us we don't have time and we have to act now. But we still hesitate to the cost of how much money we have to spend on prepare for the climate change. So now we have to understand how urgent we are. And as you already know, the Philippines suffering a lot of big typhoons. So I think we have to have a higher target to stop climate change. But now it's not enough. Lima is also not enough.
It had been hoped that the agreement that was signed between President Obama and the President of China would have added a lot of momentum to the climate talks here in Lima. But it's been disappointing to see that many of the delegations have just gone back into the same negotiating pattern and the same positions that they have always had. As to the likely outcome at the end of the COP, to date it's been very slow progress through the paragraphs in the draft agreement. Virtually every conceivable option is still on the table in every paragraph. It's going to be, as it always is, people working all through the next few days and nights to get something out of Lima. But it really does have to be a strong negotiating document if we are to get an agreement in Paris. And my concern is, with all of those bracketed options still there, that we will see countries like Australia, like Canada and others working to take out of the text any really serious goals, particularly in relation to fossil fuels. But I hope that I am wrong in that. And I also hope that countries will hold the line in terms of trying to weaken various accounting rules. When it comes to the elements that might be in the nationally determined contributions, that remains incredibly vague. And we have to have a very clear view of what elements will be acceptable and the detail around those elements, and that is not there yet. So there's going to be a lot of work to do after Lima and before Paris to actually require the kind of scrutiny and level playing field that needs to be there so that we can actually assess genuine progress. And finally, there is a substantial gap between the pledges that are on the table and what is required to constrain global warming to less than 2 degrees, and there is no evidence to date of any great ambition from any of the parties here to actually close that gap. So that's quite disappointing that there is almost a sense of complacency here in Lima when, to get an agreement in Paris, we need people to really knuckle down with specific outcomes.
I just say for myself and we have had the great opportunity earlier today of meeting as Greens from many more countries than what you see on the platform this evening. And we're really committed that with the pre-2020 action needs to be focused upon. Right now, even in the text, there's always been a sense that we need pre-2020 ambition. That language is still there, but we need to keep that focus that with a treaty to be arrived at in 2015 in Paris to take effect in 2020, we mustn't fail to keep our focus very clearly on what can be done fast, what can be done soon, what do we start doing before 2020. I agree with everything that my other colleagues have said, but I remain concerned, and those who are watching and who are participating in this process will recognize that there's a long way to go between Lima to get to Paris. We still have many more hours of negotiating here in Lima, but we're going to need to see real leadership and the nations of the world and the peoples of the world demanding of their governments that we chart a path to get off fossil fuels entirely by the end of the century, with meaningful steps along the way to accomplish that. And I don't see that yet in the text, although, as Senator Milne has said, it's clear that just about everything remains in the text. But we'll see what remains when we leave here sometime later this week. So again, I thank my colleagues, and particularly Veronica from Global Greens, for organizing a chance for us to speak with you about the state of the negotiations here and the tremendous need for urgency.
Okay, thank you very much. I also would like to add something, and it's about we have to listen also the civil society. Today, all of us who are here, we were in this climate people march in Lima, and it was absolutely full of people asking for climate justice, to have a fair treaty for the climate. And then I think we can act together, pushing the pressure to the government from inside and outside of the parliament. And this is one of the main goals of Global Greens. Then thank you for all of you who are listening and watching us, and see you probably in the end of the COP to tell you more. Thank you, and thank you to all of you. Thank you.